you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Lebanese President Michel Sleiman is urging the formation of a government that can hold the elections next spring. Public Works and Transport Minister Ghazi Aridi accuses the Finance Minister of obstructing the allocations of funds for public works throughout the country. And South Africa is preparing for one of the biggest memorial services the world has ever witnessed in honor of Nelson Mandela. Lebanese President Michel Sleiman stresses that the presidential elections will be staged as scheduled in spring of 2014. He consequently demands the formation of a government that can hold the elections regardless if it does not enjoy Parliament's confidence. He rejects, however, the formation of a de facto government. Sleiman's 6-year term ends in May, but there are fears that the differences between the March 8 and 14 camps will lead to a vacuum in the country's top post. Addressing demands to hold a cabinet session to tackle the petroleum file, Sleiman says this issue alone is not enough to convene the government. For his part, Speaker Nabih Berri expresses all-out support for the cabinet to hold a session to tackle the delicate situation in the country, as well as the petroleum file. Energy Minister Gibran Bastille states that the possibility of holding a cabinet session to address the oil and gas exploration file lies in the hands of the Future movement. His remarks come following talks with Speaker Nabih Berri in Ain Tine. The minister also accused Prime Minister Najib Mikati of seeking to appease the March 14 alliance camp through refraining from calling cabinet to address the pending issues. Bastille says he had been urging him to invite ministers for a session to approve 2 decrees that call for demarcating 10 maritime oil exploration blocks and setting up a revenue-sharing model. Delays in issuing the decrees could postpone offshore drilling and exploration. Mikati argued that the Constitution did not authorize him to hold a session for that purpose and insisted that it lacked political consensus. Public Works and Transport Minister Ghazi Aridi accuses the Finance Minister of obstructing the allocation of funds for public works throughout the country, including the cleaning of sewers ahead of winter season. Aridi was criticized of neglect when roads were swamped with rainwater last week. During a lengthy press conference he held at his office, he apologized from the people who spent hours on the roads when several Beirut neighborhoods and the capital's suburbs were flooded because of drains were not cleared. He claimed, however, that he hadn't been granted the necessary funds to begin works throughout the country. Prime Minister Najib Mikati took off to South Africa to take part in a memorial service for anti-apartheid hero Nelson Mandela. A source at Beirut International Airport said Mikati boarded a regular flight to Johannesburg via Doha, Qatar. More than 50 heads of state and government officials have announced they will travel to South Africa to pay their respects to Mandela. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had decided not to attend the memorial service because it is too expensive. Électricité du Liban warns that Lebanon will suffer additional power cuts as the country braces for a severe winter storm. A source at EDL says that starting this afternoon, power stations will gradually shut for several hours due to shortage in fuel and gas oil. The source says Beirut could face additional power rationing than the already 3 hours of cut per day, while various regions in the north, south, and east Lebanon are likely to stay without electricity for up to 18 hours. The source attributed the problem to the lack of finance ministry funds allocated to fuel oil. Syrian regime troops have regained control of the key Damascus-Homs highway after seizing most of the town of Nabak in the Kalamoun region. This is according to a monitoring group. Meanwhile, Syria's Al-Watan newspaper says authorities have taken full control of Nabak and expect to reopen the highway shortly. The highway has been closed for around 20 days because of fighting, preventing the delivery of fuel to the capital. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius played down expectations for next month's talks in Geneva on the Syrian conflict, saying he doubted they would mark a breakthrough. The Geneva II meeting is slated for January the 22nd and aims to bring together Syria's opposition and President Bashar al-Assad's regime to try to end the country's nearly 3-year civil war. There is still no certainty the UN-backed talks, which seek to put in place a transitional government, will go ahead. A new round of vaccinations against polio has started in Syria. It is the second vaccination drive since polio broke out in the country late October. The World Health Organization says the vaccination drive will cover more areas, not only targeting children living in temporary settlements, but also those in some of the conflict areas, which rely on the coordination of related international organizations. WHO earlier confirmed that the disease this time entered from countries such as Pakistan. The large number of foreign militants entering Syria, plus the growing number of Syrian refugees fleeing to neighboring countries, along with worsening sanitary conditions, are working together to increase the chance for the spread of such diseases as polio. WHO says Syria's neighboring countries need to vaccinate their populations against the disease, namely Lebanon. And coming up next, French troops will begin disarming rebel fighters across the Central African Republic. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has welcomed Israel's Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman to Moscow for talks. On his arrival, Lieberman said he was hoping for fruitful talks about problems in the Middle East and the world. Their meeting comes just 2 weeks after an interim accord was reached in Geneva between Iran and world powers, including Russia, whereby Iran agreed to some curbs on its disputed nuclear program in exchange for the easing of international sanctions. Reports say Lavrov is due to visit Iran on Tuesday, where he plans to discuss the situation surrounding Iran's nuclear program. At least 8 people have been killed following a car bomb near a cafe in central Iraq. Police say the blast also wounded 22 people. Today's attack is the latest in a series of bombings in and around Baghdad, which killed at least 39 people. Armed groups have attacked dozens of cafes in Iraq in recent months and have repeatedly targeted other crowded areas such as markets and mosques, despite increased security measures put in place by the authorities. Officials have pointed the finger at al-Qaeda-linked groups, emboldened by the civil war in neighboring Syria, but analysts and diplomats say the government has not done enough to address underlying domestic problems. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has held talks with Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif as part of an effort to diffuse tensions over controversial U.S. drone strikes and Pakistan's role in Afghanistan. During today's meeting in Rawalpindi, Hagel and Sharif pledged to work together to strengthen the country's relationship. Ties between the U.S. and Pakistan have been seriously strained over U.S. drone raids in Pakistan's tribal belt, as well as Afghan Taliban sanctuaries inside Pakistan's border. But the Pakistani government says substantial progress has been made in repairing the relationship. A U.S. defense official says Hagel was visiting the country in recognition of the tremendous support that Pakistan has provided in the war on terror. Moving on to Africa, French troops will begin disarming rebel fighters across the Central African Republic as thousands of foreign soldiers pour into the country in an effort to stop recent violence. France is deploying 1,600 troops to the Central African Republic after the UN Security Council authorized it to use force to help African peacekeepers struggling to restore order. The plan to seize weaponry comes after the country's president told reporters he was not in complete control of his country. The former rebels who control the country were patrolling neighborhoods across the capitals, Bangui, despite an order to return to their barracks. The Red Cross says 400 bodies were found after 3 days of fighting between Seleka and a largely Christian armed group named Anti-Balaka. And now for news around the world in brief. At least 7 people have been killed after a commuter train collided with a truck hauling fuel in Indonesia's capital of Jakarta. Police say the accident killed the train engineer and at least 6 others and injured 20 people. A company spokeswoman said the train was headed to central Jakarta when the accident occurred just before noon local time. Thailand's Prime Minister has decided to dissolve parliament and call early elections in an effort to defuse a political crisis, but opponents of her government have pledged to continue their protests, include Shinawatra, who won a non-confidence vote in parliament late last month, made the announcement in a televised address. An official of the country's polling commission says the election will probably be held on February the 2nd of 2014. Singapore's Prime Minister has pledged to prosecute individuals involved with an overnight riot in the city-state, which left at least 18 people injured. Police say the disturbance started in the congested Little India district when a 33-year-old Indian man was killed after being hit by a private bus driven by a Singaporean. Hundreds of migrant workers, angered by a road accident, battled police and set vehicles ablaze. South African security services, armed forces and citizens prepare for one of the biggest memorial services and funerals the world has ever seen to remember and celebrate the life of Nelson Mandela. Presidents, past and present, global figures and A-list celebrities are making their way to South Africa to pay the world's respects at the funeral. Tomorrow, more than 80,000 people, including 53 heads of states, will attend an impassioned, emotional tribute to the country's inspirational first black president at the FNB Stadium in Soweto, where he made his last major public appearance for the 2010 World Cup final. The service is seen as a final chance for grieving South Africans to unite in a mass celebration of Mandela's life ahead of the more formal state funeral. The commemorations will culminate with the burial of Mandela on December 15th in Kunu, the rural village where he spent his early childhood.
In his ways of communicating with people, being humble, being assertive at the same time, being loving, caring, compassionate to humanity.
We will love him very much. Always loving everybody. He's the one who brings the country to everyone. So we are on one nation.
It's quite an amazing moment that some of us never even thought that we could find ourselves in the position that I am now.
I came to bring flowers for Mandela.
I'm happy because I've been in a place where there's men of leaders that have been here.
I was surprised, but then just that a lot of people came to pledge their support.
I'm feeling very emotional, and it's like a calm over South Africa, and I'm thinking that I hope this is going to bring us together more as a nation once again. You know, when he first was released, and when we were all so nervous as white South Africans.
It's really sad that he's been with us, and he's gone now.
I can't believe that this is really happening, like that we're all just here and I see all these flowers and like that he's just gone now.
It's best for us and to show that we respected the greatest man who has ever walked the planet.
Mak Maharaj, South Africa's presidential spokesman and a close friend of Nelson Mandela, says the people of South Africa and the rest of the world have to find a way of living as a servant of the people, as Mandela did. He added that the death of the anti-apartheid leader is uniting the country in a way not seen before.
The first thing is that everybody will be building all sorts of monuments in stone and bronze. That has to be done, but what the people have shown is that they want the man to live inside them, and we have to find a way to do that. The second thing is, the central message that I get from his life is that through struggle, he came to realize that he was a servant of the people. And I think that has a huge message for us. We do things for ourselves, and that is important. But when you do things to change the lives of others, that's when you gain your humanity. And that, I think, is the root of what we should be. All of us wanting to be a Mandela, to be a servant of the people. The world has never seen a funeral like this. Nobody could prepare for it adequately. But I think with all the hiccups, it's going well. And what is carrying us is the spirit of the people around the world and here in South Africa. Down in the streets, in the townships, in the suburbs, people are uniting, holding hands, helping each other. Look, I think Madiba set us up. If he had died in December when he went to hospital, I think there would have been wailing and tearing of hairs. But I think he has conditioned us to it. We have accepted his mortality. And today we have learned, therefore, rather than being dejected and sorrowful, we need to celebrate and try and find ways to make him live inside us.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Lebanese President Michel Sleiman is urging the formation of a government that can hold the elections next spring. Public Works and Transport Minister Ghazi Aridi accuses the Finance Minister of obstructing the allocation of funds for public works throughout the country. And South Africa is preparing for one of the biggest memorial services the world has ever witnessed in honor of Nelson Mandela. Those are your Monday headlines from Future Television, live from Beirut. Catch us again tomorrow, same time for more of the world's top stories.